Now that I'm starting to put the pieces of my infographic together, I thought I'd show you a quick tip. I've gone through each of my fun items and vectorized them essentially by taking my pen tool and setting the drop down to shape so it will create a shape layer, and then tracing over the different parts to make a stylized version of that image. To save myself work though, I've already made a couple of ice cream scoops here on my cone. I'm going to take those vector shapes and move them over to my Sunday file so that I can use them again. So here I've got my layers selected. Then I need to grab them out here and drag them up to the tab of my Sunday file. Now you notice these are really tiny. If I had originally created these as pixel layers, that would be a problem. But because they're vector layers, I can actually transform by hitting Command T, holding Shift, and then make them as large as I need to. A useful thing to do when you have vectors or shapes that are made up of multiple pieces, like this is a light layer and a dark layer, is to select them both in your layers and link them by right-clicking and choosing Link Layers. Once you have them linked, you can unlink them again by right-clicking and choosing Unlink Layers. Now that I've got these set up, I can move them over the sundae dish that I've created and size them so it all looks great. Now keep in mind that you can keep your number of vector layers a little more under control by choosing multiple layers. So for example, I'm going to grab all of the shape layers that belong to this object. I did that by grabbing my move tool and holding down Command while I shift clicked it on each part, and then turn that into a smart object. So I'm going to right click over here over these layers and convert it to a smart object. Now this is still vector, which means I could resize it any size I needed and it wouldn't lose image quality. But if I ever need to come in and work with all of those layers again, I just double click on that layer thumbnail and there they are. After making any changes, I would save and close that window and it would update in my other file. I'm going to arrange my ice cream top layers. In fact, before I do that, I'm going to also take the two parts of them and turn them into a smart object. So now I only have 3 layers to work with. Whenever you're arranging multiple copies of the same thing, so for example I've got ice cream bits here, keep in mind that visually odd numbers are more attractive than even numbers, and also odd sized shapes are going to be more attractive. So I'm going to make one of these a little bit bigger and then have them sized down. So I've got a smaller and a smaller and a smaller, and I'll go with 3 here. And I want them all 3 to be able to be seen, so this might take a little bit of rearranging to come to just the right combination. So I've finished arranging my ice cream and even created a new vector layer that's supposed to be caramel or fudge or something on top of the ice cream, and realized that I failed to gather a graphic that I needed. I actually want a cherry to go on top of this. So just to show you my process from beginning to end of finding an image to work from and creating a shape from it, I start with Google and just do a quick image search. So I'm just going to do an ice cream sundae, and then type image. Now these ones don't matter what resolution they are because I'm going to trace it from and make a vector image. So I like this one right here. I kind of like the whipped cream and the cherry on top. So I'm going to just copy this by right clicking on it and then go over to Photoshop and I'll paste it. Make this just a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. Now remember, the actual visual quality of this graphic doesn't matter because we're going to use the pen tool to make a vector that's all crisp and clean. So I'll use my top pen tool, and when I begin the shape I always set my drop down to shape and fill and stroke to none. That way I just have the path line and nothing getting in the way. So I'll use my pen tool. If you're still not sure how to use a pen tool, it's covered pretty well in the vector chapters. Here's something. See how this bit of the cherry is hidden by the whipped cream? What you need to do in areas like that is pretend like you can still see the rest of the cherry and just create a line where you think that would be. And for most objects that works great. If it were really complex it might not work so well, but this is a really simple shape, so we're not going to worry about it too much. So now I've got my path completely closed. I can come back to my fill color and change it. Now I know the cherry is red, but I have a color scheme and I want to stick to it. So I'm going to use my pink color instead. That's the base shape of the cherry. If you want to create a shape that has a little more depth, here's the cool trick I'm going to show you how to do. Essentially, you need to make either a lighter spot to indicate a highlight or a darker area to indicate a shadow. And it can be really tricky trying to match the exact outer edge, so here's how you get around that. Make a copy of the base shape. Grab your pen tool and then up here in the tool controls, click on the, I think it's called the path operations, and choose Intersect Shape Areas. I'm also going to change the color of this layer to be the lighter pink, and you'll see why in just a moment. I want to make this area right here the highlight, so it's going to go right up to the edge. I can create by starting the shape outside of the cherry and then coming in and just making or guessing where the light might shine off of that and connect my shape. Now you'll notice how all the area outside of the cherry is actually empty of color, and only where these two shapes intersect is where that highlight color is showing, and that's the trick. So make a copy of your original shape, change the setting to Intersect Shape Areas. Remember that it's helpful to change the color of that top shape, and then use your pen tool to make an intersecting shape and make that highlight. While I'm at it, you know what, instead of just saying it, I'll talk you through it one more time. I think I want that cherry stem to be brown, so I'm going to take my basic shape again and duplicate it. I'm going to change the color to the stem color that I want, and then choose my Intersect Shape options. Now I can make a big messy shape outside. It doesn't matter what it is outside. The only lines that really matter are the ones that are inside that actual shape. So now I have a cherry that has some depth to it. I'm going to take those three layers that are all the cherry layers and link them together by select them, right-clicking, and choosing Link Layers. Now I could turn it into a smart object, or if you'd rather work with something a little easier, maybe just drop them all into the new folder and then name that folder whatever the object is. So now I have my cherry to go on top of my ice cream. I'm going to take that bunch of layers and set it up at the top so it's on top of everything, and then maybe grab everything else and move it down. So this is just rearranging stuff, and then because this is vector, I can size it any way I want. Alrighty. So there's our ice cream sundae. It's still really simple, really flat shapes, but it's got a little bit of depth to it and some extra layers. Now you'll notice I do have a lot of layers over here, but I'm going to grab all of them together, hold down or grab my move tool here, and then when I click out here, I can drag it all the way over to my file that I'm wanting to put everything in and let go. Now you'll notice again we've got vastly different sizes, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. Instead, I want to right click on my layers while they're still all selected and convert it to a smart object. Now I can transform and shrink it down to the size that I need it to be. Now you notice I did an oops. I actually brought the layer that has this ice cream sundae in it, and I don't want that picture as part of my graphic. So I'm going to double click on the thumbnail and find that layer, get rid of it. In Smart Objects, it's not usually a good idea to have all of this extra space. It doesn't really make any problems, it's just kind of annoying to work with. You can get rid of that really easy by going to the Edit menu and choosing Trim. Not the Edit menu, let's see where it's at. It's under Image menu, and then choose Transparent Pixels and say OK. Then save your change and close the window. And now that layer is gone and I've got my sundae. So I'm going to pause for a minute and just move all of my items over to here and start laying out the graphic, and then come back and show you the rest of the steps.